Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about probably one of my favorite pre-spawn bass fishing baits and maybe the best pre-spawn bass fishing bait of all time, and that is going to be the Squarebill Crankbait. So stay tuned, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about the equipment you need, how to fish this bait, where to fish this bait, and hopefully you'll be catching a ton more big bass this spring on a Squarebill crankbait. So the Squarebill crankbait is one of my favorite pre-spawn bass fishing baits. Anytime that water hits 48, even 50 and above, that is like the range that I really want to throw this thing, and I'll throw it all the way up into the spawn. They will always eat the Squarebill crankbait while they're in the pre-spawn up into the spawn. A lot of times these fish are going to be hanging around tight to cover, up shallow, waiting to make their move to spawn. They'll hang pretty close to their spawning areas, and then when they're ready to go spawn, they'll go actually get on bed, and they're susceptible to the Squarebill the entire time. My favorite is in the early spring when you get that rain, you get snow melt up here in the Northeast, you get that dirtier water that comes with the springtime snow melt and runoff, all that kind of stuff. There's a reason that is so effective, and there's a couple things that does for fishing a Squarebill crankbait. The first thing is it's going to put those fish shallow. They have to go shallow in that dirty water because they cannot see as well. So they're going to go up shallow, they're going to hold tight to cover. My favorite way to fish these Squarebills is to find wood and other logs that are laid down on the bank, and they will hold tight to those because they can't see very well. So they'll hang out next to those logs, and a very effective bait to get through there, but to search for the active fish is the Squarebill. So that is a perfect place for them to be. The other thing that dirty water does is it warms up faster than clear water. Anytime you get a sunny day, that dirty water is going to absorb the heat a lot faster, and it will also pressure those fish to go up to the bank because that's the warmer water that time of year. In the winter, the warmer water is out deeper, but as soon as you start having some warm, sunny days in the springtime, the warmer water is actually going to start being on the bank because that water is going to heat up faster than the water that's down below it. And on top of that, those logs will absorb the heat as well. Or if there's a rocky bank, riprap, that stuff absorbs heat very quickly. It disperses it into the water, and it will draw the fish to it like a magnet in the early spring because that is the warmest water. And this is the most effective way to find fish in that stuff. So they'll get right up there on those logs for heat and for cover, especially in dirty water. Now, if you have clear water, that doesn't mean they won't go to that stuff. That stuff still warms up faster than the rest of the lake. If they go out and just suspend in the middle of nowhere, or they can go hang tight to a pile of riprap or a log on the water, they're going to do the latter because it's warmer, especially on a sunny day. And just because it's not sunny out doesn't mean that the fish won't be up there. A lot of times what will happen is you'll have 3 or 4 sunny days, warm 70-degree odd days with a lot of sun. It'll warm that stuff up, and then you'll have a cold front come through, and it'll be very cold. It could be 50, 40 degrees, raining, cloudy, windy. You'd think those fish would never be up there. It's terrible conditions. That stuff is still holding heat from the day before, and that's still the warmer water. Those fish will still be up there, and you can still catch them on a crankbait. Sometimes it's actually better because if they have a lot of sun and warmth, they're just going to try and warm up, hold tight to the surface, and they might not see this crankbait hitting down below in the logs. But when that cold front rolls through, it gets cloudy, they're going to go hang tight underneath the log, and that is when you can tear them up on the Squarebill. So that is the type of stuff that you're going to want to look for early spring, even if the water's clear, but dirty water helps. We'll talk about that in some color selection. That's really all that's going to determine whether you want to throw a more natural color or you want to throw a more vibrant color like this guy right here. So let's go ahead and jump into what gear you need to do this to make sure you're doing it effectively. And then we'll talk about how you want to fish this in the early spring to make sure you're getting the most amount of bites on a Squarebill crankbait. So when it comes down to gear for throwing a Squarebill crankbait, there's a couple things that I look for, especially this time of year when I'm making very accurate casts up into logs and trying to get it very close to the cover. The first thing I have is a Kistler Helium. This is a 6'9" light, medium, heavy. So this is rated for 12 to 14 pound test and 3/16 to 5/8 ounce lures. That's the range that you're going to fish in a Squarebill anyway. And this has a super sharp tip so you can make sure your bait is performing properly and make sure it's bouncing off the logs. But since it's the light, medium, heavy, it has a little bit softer backbone. So when you actually get a bite, you're not going to pull that bait out of the fish's mouth. And it's not like a glass rod where you can't feel anything, or a composite rod where you can't feel as much. This is a pure fiberglass rod. You'll be able to feel everything, but it's soft enough to actually set the hook and land a bunch of fish. The other thing that I pair this up with is a Kistler Series 1 bait casting reel. I have this in a 7.3-1. It is very fast, but there is a reason for that. Again, in the springtime, I'm making very targeted casts. I'm throwing this right to a log and I'm pulling it down, bouncing it off the log. As soon as I get out of there, I'm out of the strike zone. So I'm burning this thing back in and I'm making another cast right into another log. You're not going to get bit as much just reeling it out in open water. If you're slamming this thing into the laydowns on the bank, you're going to catch a lot more fish. So I make very targeted casts. I reel it very slowly and fish it effectively through that log. As soon as it's out, I'm pulling it out and then I'm making another cast. The other thing that fast gear ratio allows me to do, a lot of times these fish will see it bounce off a log, they'll be chasing it, they'll eat that bait and push it towards you. You'll feel them knock slack in your line. I can reel faster to catch up to that fish and get a good hook set rather than putting slack in the line, getting a weak hook set and having fish come off. That is a key to landing some more fish. Even on a graphite rod, you want to have that faster gear ratio to make sure you can keep up with those fish. I then run 12-pound test straight fluorocarbon. Line is something you're going to play around with more than the setup here. So I throw 12-pound test if I'm fishing logs for the most part. It has a little bit more abrasion resistance than 10-pound, but it still allows me to fish some riprap along the way and get that bait down to its maximum diving depth or pretty close to it. The other thing you can do if you're fishing very shallow water or you're fishing very heavy cover, like a lot of laydowns up there, you can go to 15 or even 17-pound test. The problem is that the bait is not going to get as deep. Every pound test you go up, so rated pound tests, like if it's 10 pound and you go to 12 pound, you're probably going to lose 1 foot off your diving depth. If you go up to 15 pound, now you're down about 2 foot. If you go up to 17, you're cutting that in half. A lot of the, like this bait right here only goes 6 foot deep. If I put this on 17-pound test, it might only get like 3.5 foot deep. But if that's what you're fishing in, it can still be effective, and then the 17-pound test holds up to those logs much better. I'm fishing a lot in like 5-6 foot of water. The logs might be in 3, 4, 5 range as well. So I want that 12-pound test to get it down where I need it to be. The other thing you can do is go to mono as well if you like a little bit of stretch in your line. This is straight fluorocarbon. That is what I like to fish. It's a little bit more abrasion resistant than mono, and it just gets the bait down a little bit deeper because this sinks. So that allows me a direct connection to the bait. Maybe get it 6 inches, a foot deeper than I would if I was throwing 12-pound mono. But you can go to mono as well, get that extra stretch, get that bait down in the fish's mouth, and land more fish with mono on top of using this setup here. And if you want to check any of this stuff out, I will link it down below. You can check out all these products we're going to talk about in today's video, and there'll be links to go check out any of this stuff you're interested in. Now, when it comes to bait selection, I keep it very simple. You are going to need 4 Squarebills. You can pick your favorite brand and then pick them in these 4 colors and you'll be good to go. I like the KVD 1.5s, are always good. I have Excalibur XCS 100s, they're not even made anymore. 6th Sense Crush 50X is an awesome one. It has a slight rattle in it, so where a lot of these baits are silent now and they don't come with rattles, just a little bit of rattle helps in that dirtier water, especially sometimes. I have Rapala BX Brats, I have Lucky Craft crankbaits. It really doesn't matter which kind you pick, just pick one that you like and pick them in these 4 colors. So the first color you're going to need, this is going to work when they're feeding on shad or you have very dirty water. You're looking for contrast, and that is going to be a bright chartreuse. This is chartreuse black back. You can pick any chartreuse base color you want. The reason I like chartreuse black back is that it has the strong contrast between the black and yellow. Oftentimes there'll be a little orange belly too. Orange, yellow, black, it's all contrast, and it throws a very bright color to allow these fish to find it. That doesn't mean they're going to be able to find it from a long distance away, and we'll talk about that when we talk about how to fish these here in just a second, but that contrasting color really can draw some fish in from a distance. The next one that you have to have, this is especially good in dirty water as well, some sort of red or orange. I like a red with black, That's a very good one. A crawfish pattern that's red with black lines. That stands out super, super well. Again, it's contrast. That's what they're looking for. The other thing that works really well is these spring craw type colors. They're like a chartreusey orange and black, and then they have black detail on them. That also has a lot of contrast and a lot of brightness to it, and that's going to stand out and allow these fish to find it in dirty water. Then if you have some clear water, there are two other colors that you need to have. Works really well for fishing in some cleaner bodies of water. And that first color is going to be any type of shad pattern. So just a basic white with some shad color to it. This is a threadfin shad from 6 Cents. It has all the different varieties of color, chartreuse line, different hues of color on there to make it really look like a shad. Or you can just go with the standard sexy shad color, just a basic shad color. That's all you need, something with a white base to it. And that is the key whenever those fish are feeding on shad in some cleaner water. That's going to really get you a lot of bites. And then if you like to fish ponds, if you like to fish small lakes that don't have shad, you like to fish places that those fish really feed on bluegills, you got to have a bluegill colored squarebill. It works awesome, especially the closer you get to the spawn, because the bluegills will get up there, start trying to eat eggs, or get prepared to actually go raid these nests when these bass are spawning. They get very territorial towards the bluegills the closer you get to the spawn. So this bluegill colored squarebill can really catch a lot of fish when you're closer to the spawn, when they're not looking to feed, they're not looking to find some shad out there, they're not looking to grab crawfish that are crawling around on some rocks. All they're thinking about is getting ready to spawn. But if a bluegill comes banging through their home on a log and gets right in their face, they will not turn it down. They will just destroy it. So that is a good color to have that not many people talk about. It is one you got to have with you. I don't throw it as often as the other three. Those are my standbys. But when the time is right, if you go to the bluegill crankbait, it will outfish the other three colors tenfold. So lastly, how am I going to fish this squarebill this time of year? You can just cast it out there and reel it in and bang it off of stuff on the bottom, and you will catch fish doing that. It is a very effective technique. I like the squarebill so much because it can cover so much water that way. You can just cast and wind, and I will do that in between sections of bank that I know are really good, or just trying to search for some fish. But if you're fishing around rocks, riprap, stuff like that, I will 45-degree angle my cast up on the bank or parallel it, and I will make sure that I get this thing down to the bottom, and as soon as I start feeling the rocks, I'll slow my reel down, and I want it to bounce off every rock hard and deflect and make a lot of commotion. That's when they'll find it. If there's fish sitting down there on the riprap, there'll be multiple roaming around down there chasing bait. You get the attention, get the competition going, they see that bait, they'll come over and get it, and then you just want to fish it really slowly once you get it down in those rocks and just kind of bounce it slow on the rocks down there. But my favorite way to fish the squarebill crankbait in the springtime is in wood, as we talked about. There's a specific thing that I like to do when I'm fishing this around wood. What I will do is I will throw this right up to the base of the log as close as I can get to the bank. I will throw this so tight to the cover that's on the bank, and I will reel it through the cover and bounce it off everything very slowly. I will not just burn it through the log and keep casting and winding, throw it near the log and say, oh, if there's a fish up there, it'll come get it. I want this like within inches of the base of the log, the big tree trunks that are down there. And then I want to wind it super slow through every limb and feel it bouncing and deflecting off the limbs that are in there. Any fish that is holding tight to that cover in there, they will see this bright chartreuse. They will feel the vibration of this thing just destroying the limbs going through there and fishing it nice and slow. Gives them a chance to find it. It throws off vibration. It gives everything that these fish need to find this bait, and they will destroy it in those laydowns. They are the most predictable areas these fish will be this time of year, and if you fish them effectively and thoroughly, you will catch a ton of fish on a squarebill this time of year. It is one of my favorite baits to fish. I love throwing a crankbait this time of year, especially the squarebill type. And if you enjoyed today's video, there are 5 other types of crankbaits that you need to have with you during the pre-spawn. Go ahead and check this video out right here. Leave a like down below. The links to all the products will be down there. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more of my fishing videos coming up. Thanks for watching.